Yeah. It's okay.
We'll launch there. Hello, everyone. If you're there yet, I don't know. There we go. Boy, that would be a great script to write. Is when you're watching your own channel to have it auto mute on a live stream for you, because usually there's that.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
We'll make a fortune off that one if we could sell it to everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Happy Friday.
Hello, everybody.
You know what? Let's start off. If just people, I put it in the email if you're on the reminder list, but that Isaiah's right now, that's what he's been doing yesterday and the last couple of days, is working on that advanced like objects and classes course.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, go to the Automator. Let's just see. Oh, you know what? I'll use my new little tool that we wrote. Pull it up, and I'll put it here in the chat. So there you can learn a little bit more about it if you go to that URL. And so we don't know. Someone was asking when is it going to be ready, and like we're just working on it, right? And we finalized the outline, I should say, because then it was like, okay, now we got to actually create the content and edit and create examples, and so it's what would you say? Conservatively, I'd say in 2 weeks we should be good, right? Just to give a far point. Hopefully it's sooner, but yeah, I'd say within 2 weeks we should be good to go.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing. Oh, hey, this meeting's being live streamed. Did you know that? Yeah, I got a warning.
It just lets you know, even though you were the one who selected it, right? Okay.
Oh, hey, here's Guy. I met Guy.
What do you mean? No.
Let's go, Guy.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How you doing? I was gonna say you're off camera. Is that your part of your studio in the background there?
That is because my studio is so untidy. I took a picture of it tidy and then I put it as my background.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh, that's awesome. Look, my room's always clean, Mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and I think we can borrow from that as far as the whole automation type of things of like, hey, you know what? Have a template for what you do and have it. That's like I create for the API syntax writer too. It's like it's a template that I dump in there with the stuff I want. Like it's always there. Like,
Well, because I wear 2 hats or 3 hats, I wear a photography studio hat, a tango dance instructor hat.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
And I do a little bit of AutoHotkey for my photographer, people. So I suppose software person. So I wear 3 different hats. So depending on how I present myself, I've got to switch the hats, and that's the identity that goes with it.
To add on to that, because I know just when you run a small business, you wear a lot more hats than that, right?
You're doing absolutely
everything.
That is right.
And here's the thing, which most people don't realize. Like when you run a small business, like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, as a photographer, you're like, hey, I could be the most amazing photographer in the world, but if the marketing sadly is so much more, I don't want to say important, because you still got to be a good photographer. But if you want to grow your business, it's sad, but you really got to focus on the marketing.
So here's the thing. I've been in the business for over 35 years. And it's taken me that long to realize that my customers don't give a shit about me.
That's so true. Yeah.
The only thing they give a shit about is what's in it for them.
What they're going to get. Yeah, of course.
And the rest is just ego.
No, I don't think it was on the call last week, but we were talking with someone. I said, I was struggling just getting my son to brush his teeth. And I kept trying to tell him, look, you know, you're going to get cavities. The dentist is going to have to drill all this stuff. And I finally realized, you know, he needs to have a motivation of what motivates him. And I'm like, you know what? Girls won't want to talk to you. Like, you know, I mean, I totally changed it. I'm like, you got to make it where every person has their motivations, right? And when you blah, blah, blah on about how good you are, even then people don't really listen to it anyway, right? Because it's not credible. That's why testimonials, you know, are so powerful. Someone else is saying how great you are. And
it's about emotion.
Absolutely. Storytelling is amazing.
Yeah, it's about emotion. And if they feel that they get something of value, whether in reality is of value or not, or if someone up the road can give them better, less value, is irrespective. But it's they feel that you've given them something of value, they're prepared to pay for it.
Yeah.
The question is, do they value what you give them? So the marketing proposition is to find out what they value, because without that, you can't give it to them.
I remember a study, this is like 20, 30 years ago, where they did a study on doctors, and they did, you know, said, they asked people, would you rather have like the best surgeon in the world that was just so qualified, or one, you know, but he was curt and he didn't sit with you and handhold you stuff, or would you rather have someone that spends the time and talks to you and does stuff, and you know, he's not the best? And everybody, like, it was so overwhelming, people wanted that handholding, but it was a big aha to them of like,
but logically, you know, if it's a life or death situation, I'd rather have the arsehole, but at least I live. Right. Pardon my French, you know.
I think people would be like, I don't mind if I die, but if I die happy, you know.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
What I wouldn't want is to die alone in a room because the doctor didn't care to see me. But if it was a doctor that he was like there saying, "Oh, I'm sorry that you're dying,"
that's the human condition.
Yeah,
that is a human condition. And the quicker we can realize this, the better, better business we'll do. I've got a couple of questions today that are really, really quick.
I think what we're going to do before we go into the questions, I actually wanted to verify if there are some people who have asked questions outside of the, you know,
Is Jean here as well?
That's the thing. No, we're actually waiting for them.
He said he'd be joining late.
I've got a question for him, and I've got a quick question for you.
Okay, yeah. In any case, I do wanted to say, like, one of the things that we have been working on for the past few days as well, beside the class that we're doing, Joe, is actually getting some scripts, you know, to adapt to this object notation. So a lot of people are actually kind of like wondering about why is that good. At some point, we're going to try to kind of like talk a little bit about why object notation might be a good idea. But of course, those are the type of things that we're going to talk in the course, like in depth, but we might also take a little time to just, hey, have you ever tried object notation? Like, have you ever done that? And we're waiting for the other guys to see what their experience
I
with
would
that
like to know what is object notation in the first place. I need to know what it is before I need to know if I need it.
Right. Yeah, well, I don't think you really need it. It is actually kind of like something that is a preference. Some people rather code like that, some others don't. There are advantages and disadvantages, and you know, that's what our course is all about. What are the advantages and disadvantages of using that notation and so on? But I am curious about the experience about people who have been coding, how, like, to listen to them, how they have used it, and if they actually rather use that instead of doing the normal functional programming, and so on. But again, we're going to be waiting for them a little bit and see what happens.
Well, it's just because I think it was Josh was his name. He submitted his question ahead of time.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and because who knows if he'll actually show up, right? So why don't we go ahead and cover his question, because I don't think it's also very long. But
okay, not a problem. Yes, that is right. So, well, his question was mainly about whether he could, well, what I understood by this, by the way, is whether he could, if it was difficult to add an import and export functionality to the GUI that he already has. So first of all, let's go ahead and show my screen real quick. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show his original code first. And what we're gonna do, let me go ahead and show this commit real quick. Yeah, check out. So this is the code that he sent. What we have here is a very simple GUI that allows him to input information, different types of details. And then when he hits one of these buttons, email, chat, work done, or clear, and here he has a new button, they do different actions. It seems to be that if he clicks email, it just grabs the email body here and a few other details and just sends it as an email or whatever he's at. What I noticed that he's doing is that, for example, for the email function, he just submits the GUI, sends the user email and his name, but he actually sends it. So it looks like he's using the GUI like always on top. And I can tell that, for example, if I click other places, he has always on top here. So probably he has his email open, he adds some information, clicks email, and then it is sent to the active window right now, which is a way of doing it. That's okay. And for chat, he does something similar and so on. But what he wants to do, what I understood, is that he wants to have a button to actually save the information into a file. And that later on, he might want to kind of like open that file and fill out the GUI again. So let me show you the end result. So let's go ahead and take a look at the end result. Let's go ahead and do this. The end result for me is this. I have, I just added two new buttons here on the menu, one for importing and one for exporting. If we save some information, let's say Isaiah, the-Automator, you know,
a hot string for that. Jeez.
yeah. I don't know. PC is down. I don't know, a number, ticket number. Let's go ahead and add fixed PC. Finished. This is a test. So now, once you have everything already finished, you can actually go ahead and click your buttons as you would. But then you can go ahead and export the file. It would ask you, where do you want to export it to? It would give you kind of like a generic name, which we can change later. We save that. The information is saved and the GUI is cleared. But also when you go ahead and click on import, you can double click on that file and it would actually fill out your GUI again. So basically you can technically save information based on the user. So if you have different users, you can have different information for each of them. I only had it so that you can save one per person because it is being saved with the person's name, but we could have the GUI just do other things like save different for different, like many for one person. I just didn't want to go ahead and do something too complicated for you. Let's go ahead and take a look at the code real quick. Again, what I just did was I went here to the file menu, added the import and export commands with a label for each of them. And if you go down here and look for the import, I would allow you to select the file, okay? Let's go ahead and talk about the export first. First, I submit the GUI and make sure that I do not hide it. The reason why I mentioned this one for you in particular is because I noticed that in your code up here, you tend to submit the code and show the window again. You don't have to do those two steps. If you don't want to the window to go away, just say no hide in here, and then you don't need to show the GUI again. So that is a quick tip, especially for you, because I'm seeing that you are actually doing the 2 steps when one would be just enough. Okay, so if you change that in all your code, you don't need to do that any longer. This GUI show at the bottom. So that's why I mentioned it. So I do not hide it. I allow you to select a file and save the information into this variable here. If you did not select any files, it would give you a message box and not do anything, which is always a good idea. Whenever you're doing this file selection thing, if somebody doesn't select a file, you should do something, either tell them or let them know or perform some actions.
I think you might be on the wrong, it should be on the import, not export.
Yeah, let me go ahead and talk about the export first, because the import actually relies on you exporting something first.
Okay.
So yeah, in this case, if you exported the data, what it's going to do is that it's just going to grab each of the variables and it's going to tap delimited. Each of the variables, I'm just putting them as tap delimited variables here. And that data, I'm just going to append it to the file that you selected. So basically, it is a very simple process of you grabbing all the variables, putting it in the format that you want. It could be comma delimited, or it could be tab delimited. The reason why I didn't use commas is because you have email here, and very likely inside your email body, you might have a lot of commas, So if you have comma delimited files, that might create an issue for you.
Speaking as someone who's, I did this kind of stuff for years and years, I detested comma delimited file because of that reason. Is
exactly
often it leads to
it would make you have a lot of issues, right?
I don't know why pipe delimited isn't a bigger thing, because that honestly is like,
again, like another character that is not used very often.
Right.
So I just use the tab delimited files. It could be anything that is not widely used. So you file append that into the file. That's it. Now my file, if you look at it, that's what it looks like. Let me show you. I'm just going to open it. It is just a bunch of data that is delimited by tabs right here. That's all. So I go ahead and clear the GUI later on. I just used the same clear label that you had. I actually changed it a little bit. I will talk about that later, but I just clear the GUI and that's it. Now for importing, I allow you to select a file, so you can select which one you want to import. Again, if there's no file selected, I will let you know and not do anything. And now I just go ahead and read the file. I just need to read one line because that's the only thing that I import, and I put it in a data variable. That data variable, I just go ahead and split it by tab delimited. In each tab, I just split it in that. And then I will go for each control in my GUI. I would grab the data that belongs to it. And as I have the GUI in the same order as I saved the file, I would just need to use the index of that. It is a little bit tricky. Maybe I would try to show you what that means later on if you have a one-on-one conversation with me, because it would be tricky for me to explain how one corresponds to another. But I just go in a loop and go one by one. And let me go ahead and stop right here. I'm going to make a stop on my program there so that you take a look at how it looks like and probably get a glimpse at what I mean. So if I go ahead and select the file, right? Now the program just stopped. And if I go ahead and take a look at the variables, there'll be one that says data, which is this line here, 133. And the data variable on the first index will have one thing, on the second index another. So basically my variable now is organized by index. So 1 would be Isaiah, 2 would be the Automator, and those are exactly the same as the controls that you can see here. And as I saved it in the same order, what I'm doing now is that for each control in the order that it was saved, I just use the index for it. So when I go ahead and enter my loop, the first index is number 1, and that would be Isaiah, which is also the user. So that's the reason why every time this loop is going, it is going in the same order that I saved, and it is able to actually just fill out my control exactly as it was saved at the beginning. So it is a very simple idea. Once you get it, like once you know how it works, but at the beginning, it might be a little bit difficult to kind of like grasp how I matched one and the other.
Yeah.
And yeah.
In the chat, I put, because Isaias, I don't know if you remember, we covered, we did a video on various ways to save like user input in a video. And it was like a 30-minute video where we talked about, you know, there's the ini file stuff. There's just like using a file pen and reading the files. There's JSON or XML, isn't, you know, SQL, SQLite versus MySQL, and all these different approaches. And you know, part of it, of course, depends on how familiar you are with the stuff that you're working with, and how complex the data is going to be, how much you expect to have. Is it going to be accessed by multiple people on different computers or just on your computer? You know, there's a lot of things that go into which one you decide and why. So yeah, there's a lot. And then the second one is, and I put the link in there too, is if you're new to GUIs, Isaias is the one that worked with me on the Intro to GUIs course, which is just a really solid learning of GUIs.
Now, in this case, what I do want to point out, the reason why I used just a text file is because the type of information that we're saving right now is very simple, and it would allow me to just modify it easily. So if I could just go here and just do that. I did not want to add more complexity to it. Instead of tab delimited, I could have done it like new lines as well. So you could just have it saved in new lines. And probably that way it would be easier for you to visualize, you know, the location of each control and where am I saving the information. But again, it doesn't matter how you save the information. What matters is that when you read it, when you use the import data, that you match it in the same, how you want to put it on your GUI. That's all.
Yeah, and as what I would do, like if you're new to all of this, don't write all of them at the same time. Start with one and then add the second one, get that to work. And then it's so much easier. But when you try to do all of them at one time, it's just a lot more complicated.
That is right. Now, just to finish off with this, I noticed, I do want to talk about two changes that I did. You see the clear function that you had. If we go ahead and take a look at the original code, you will notice something interesting, and this is, you know, for everybody. Let me go ahead and clear all my changes. Let's go to all files. And let's go ahead and go back to the original code that he sent. One of the things that I noticed, and people, when you're new to it, it is very hard to spot at the beginning, but sometimes you will notice that there's a lot of code that is exactly the same. I just noticed that the clear function here and the file new function here do exactly the same. What I noticed is that you are just clearing all your controls. That's what I see here. So whenever you notice or you spot code that is either very similar or the same, you can just go ahead and comment out that code. And wherever you use that, and I noticed that it was in a menu here, you just created a menu here that has the file new, but the file new label does the same as the clear label. In that case, you can use that clear label in your menu. You can just go ahead and use clear here. And now the new command also does exactly the same as the clear. And you can save space. And also, if you needed to change one variable name, say, for example, if you had both labels here, if you needed to change, for example, the user variable, now you have to change it in two locations, okay? But if you're using exactly the same label for both actions, now when you change the variable here, it is changed for both actions. So it is a little bit better to always try to have the least amount of duplicate code as much as you can. So that was another of the changes that I did. And later on, what I did, for example, again, if it is repeated code, you can go ahead and change it a little bit. For example, in here, I'm just using the same GUI control command and clearing each and every single one of those variables. Well, you can leverage the fact that you can use the for loop for that. You can use for, and I would say each control in. And now I just grab each of those controls. I just go ahead and put them in quotation marks and put a comma to them to make them inside an object. So I just have an array here, an array for each of the commands, right? And now I don't need to have many lines doing that. I just need to use the control here in percent signs, because I'm going to go each of them, like user, I'm going to put it here. I'm going to put institution, I'm going to put it there. So right there, I just saved a lot of space by using an object here, an array, and I could just add or remove controls later on very easily, because now I just have to add a new control here, new control. And if I add a new control on my GUI, I just have to add this one little detail here, and it would allow me to just not have so much code.
Yeah, and let me chime in here a little, is that I wasn't paying attention the entire time. We're trying to deal with the chat as well, but possibly, like here, you have an array, but you didn't store the array.
No, I didn't.
Possibly,
exactly.
There might be a reason why you would end up using this thing again later, and that's where if you'd actually stored it, then again you get to take advantage of that. You don't have to go creating it multiple times, right? It's in one spot, and it's really nice.
You know, that is a very good thing that you mentioned there, because what I did when I was doing the code itself, so when I look at the new code, this is the let me see, just one second.
So if, by the way, as X is using VS Code, we have a great webinar he led on using VS Code, and especially if you're working with other people, it's phenomenal. It's integration to GitHub, which is what he's very fluent at. So he's doing a lot of different stuff with it. But those breakpoints that he uses and showing it, it's
right. That's the good thing about VS Code. Allows me to kind of like debug a little bit better, right? And what I want to do right now is that I'm just checking out. I'm comparing his code, which is what he sent me, to my changes in the same file. So basically, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just switching to my code. And now you can take a look at my code, in which I commented out the file new. I already did the control changes. And basically, and I just wanted to kind of like show you that, yeah, I had the same, what you just mentioned, like after I created the object here, I decided to use it in another location. And I said like, yeah, I should have, you know, like a control for that. Like,
right.
Like instead of having it just like that, notice that here where it says import, I am using the same control names as here where I'm using the clear. So if I had them on an object already, I could have just used the same object instead of having to use it twice, which is the point that you were making. If you're going to use the same thing twice, it is better if you define it in a variable up here, and then you just refer to the variable. You don't have to actually write the whole thing over and over again.
Well, the other thing I want to, so no one feels in any way embarrassed, because trust me, when you first start doing this, you think, oh, okay, I'm going to do this smart. You never know ahead of time what you're going to be redoing over and over, right? You might think you do, but you don't. So often that's why refactoring is so important. You write your code and then you write again, and you're like, oh my God, like later you realize these are really the same things, only I need a parameter. Hey, I can move this into a function and really streamline my code, right? It's
exactly. So basically, what I do first is that I make it work. So I have my clear function, I make it work. Now I have my import function, I make it work. And later when things are working, then I say, oh, look, that's probably the same thing here. why don't I save this in a variable and now I just have to refer to it later on? But I already have code that is working, right? So with this, I wanted to finish up with the idea. I'm not really sure if that's what you wanted, like an import and export. We can update this to make it a little bit more that it fits your needs a little bit better. But this is a good start. You can take a look at the code, try to understand it. If you want to add more functionality, then of course, just shoot us an email. We could actually
Throw that
give you a
into
little
a
bit more.
guest
Yeah, exactly. But
somewhere.
try to figure it out, try to understand it, because these type of things later on in other situations might come in very handy as well. Yeah.
Okay, Guy, what did you have your question? Sorry for.
Sorry, I've got two questions. One has gone straight out of my head, and I'll replace it. In the studio, is there a feature where it could show you all the variable list and the contents of the variables?
Yes, yes, and that is.
I'm not aware of that.
Well, you
I was
can.
wondering whether you can just
I mean,
show us.
AutoHotkey has that built in too, though, right?
Yes.
You can just say list vars and
Where?
see
Where?
Just type list
So,
vars.
yeah, so let's go ahead and show you real quick. So,
Well, and show them the whole if it's already
Yeah.
running.
So for AutoHotkey, let's go ahead and do that. So for AutoHotkey, if here is the start of the script, single
Yep.
instance force, and it has everything that is creating the GUI, and
Awesome.
here's our return. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use the list vars command.
Okay.
Now that command, what it does is that when it starts, when it run it, it should just go ahead. Allow me just 1 second. I didn't see it running. There we go. So when you run the script, here's the GUI that was shown, but also you see this other GUI that goes ahead and shows you all the variables that are right now in my program and the contents of them. So right now, most of the variables are empty.
Okay.
But wherever you put the list vars command, you will get this window with all the variables content.
Are they? Do they update live, or is it just at that moment in time that was the value of the variables?
No, so that is at that moment in time. So say, for example, if I want to do the work here, whenever you click on the work button, I want to list the variables right there.
Yep.
And let me pause the script as well, because I don't want it to be sending anything.
Okay.
I don't want to send that. So if I run the script, let's go ahead and fill it out. Doesn't matter what I put in here, right? So now if I click on work done, which is the button that is going to go ahead and do that, it will bring me this GUI. And now you can see that CVNum has some data, email has some data, user has some data. But I paused the script because I don't want it sending anything. But again, it is at that point in time. Okay.
Yeah, but a couple things and comment 62 out and rerun your script, please.
Okay. So if I go ahead and run the script, do something on it, and work done, I just paused the script.
Now double click on the system icon.
Exactly.
Right?
So if I go here,
this is available, on
here you get right now it enters into what was the most recently executed data, and you can see my GUI main here and my pause, because that's where we paused right here, right?
Yes. Yeah, I know.
But now you can actually go and click on view, and you have variables and their contents, and now you can switch back to that window that will list all of them. So
that will save me a lot of message boxes.
Right, it does. It actually, that is specially designed for trying to debug your code.
Yep.
Now, the reason why I switched to VS Code is that instead of me having to use a pause, double clicking, showing the thing, or using a message box that later on I have to remove that code, I can just simply put a breakpoint here. And that is codeless. I don't have code that I have to remove. I don't have anything. I don't have to comment. I don't have to do anything. I just pause there. And when I am running my script, as soon as I click here, the script pauses right there. Now that it's paused, I could go to my section here that takes a look at the global variables, local variables, if I am inside a function. And not only that, it actually allows me to go step by step. So
Yes.
if there are any variables that are set up like one by one, so for example, in this step that is for clearing up the GUI, I could see how the script is behaving step by step. So I have my things already like this. And if I hit clear, it will stop there. And for each of them, whenever it processes that line, you will notice that that was cleared, but not the others.
Awesome.
So if I want to see each variable one by one, VS Code allows me to see exactly how my script is behaving one by one, which is basically very useful. And then when I finish, I just click on this breakpoint and I don't have to remove code or comment.
I mean, that is an awesome, absolutely.
Right. You know what I mean? So it is an awesome, you don't have to
For
comment.
someone who's just
out,
got the hang of Studio, I just got the hang of Studio. Is it, I mean, the VS Code, is it a huge learning curve? Would you recommend moving from Studio?
Hold on, because
VS Code does the same.
Studio has breakpoints. Studio has the debugging. So does Site for AutoHotkey.
Okay.
Right.
So
These are
I didn't know. So that it's a lack of knowledge. Yes. So I don't know what I don't know. That's a problem.
Yeah, now we know.
But the other thing, which Isaias, and sorry, like I said, I was looking around again. If you mentioned this, did you mention about the object? Like with the list vars, you can't see what's there. And that's the other
right.
really
So
big,
that's another interesting
huge
point.
advantage.
Right. So let's go ahead and take a look at part of where I would see that. So I would see it on my importing features. Let me share my screen real quick. So here we go. We have the import label that I created. And this point, I do use data here and convert it into an object defined by different, things. So let's go ahead and do the following. As soon as I finish there, let me pause so that I could see my list view. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me import a file. Oh, I do not have any file exported. So let me go ahead and get that first. So let's just export something up. Doesn't matter what. Let's go ahead and export it into a file and save it. Now, when I go ahead and import, I have my file here. I open it. My script just stopped because of my breakpoint, but let me just let it run. It should have paused. Now it is paused. I can double click on it. And my pause was after the data was being converted into an object. So if I go here and look at my variables, look that my data says object. That's it. And it gives me the memory address for that object, but I cannot see anything else about it, which it sucks a little bit because that's not what I wanted. What if I want to see the object itself? If I have used a debugging client, I just paused my script here in the debugging window. I could go to my variables here, and you will notice that data here is an array, the same as the list var. But now I could just open that and I see the array details. I could see each position of the array and I could see what it contains. That is one of the main reasons why it is actually good to use a debugging client. You said that you don't know what you don't know. It's true. This concept is called debugging, and many editors, one of the features that they actually talk about is debugging features. So whenever you want to know if your editor has these capabilities and up to which point, you should just look into your editor debugging and see what it looks like. So if it has debugging capabilities, you should be able to see more or less the same information that I have here.
Joe, do you have instructional videos on debugging in Studio that you can share?
Well, I have it on site and in Studio. Yeah. And I put a list in a link in the YouTube playlist.
Okay.
But if you go to my site and search for debug, actually you probably just type /debug. It would show you. And I also put a link to dump, which is a function that even if you're not using a debugger, if you have an object, it'll allow you to peek inside the object without having a debugger and all that stuff.
And that's sorry, I'm at the moment on the Zoom meeting. Should I be looking elsewhere?
Well, there's I can post some of them here that in Zoom.
Okay, lovely.
That one, and that's the problem of trying to. Whoa, hey. Let me. I tried to copy it from. I can use my Windows history. There we go. Isaias, can you look at the link that Lex provided?
I just opened it. Yeah.
He had a question regarding Hellbent's code in something with customizing switches or something.
I think he's on the call right now. Maybe if he can explain it verbally, would be a little bit easier.
It looks like his mic isn't.
Oh, it's off, right?
Yeah.
So I do understand that this is the code that you're referring to, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. So just 1 second.
Right, I got it. Very useful. Thank you very much.
Question.
Yeah, and it was one of the. I don't know if it's been shared yet, but
I found it. Using Studio using breakpoints in debug mode.
There you go.
But
I presume that's one of
learning how to debug is one of the most important things you can do when you're first learning how to program, because it saves you so much time. What was this phrase, Isaias? Programming is debugging.
You're going to spend more time debugging than anything else, right?
Absolutely.
So, if you have something that makes your life a little bit easier in the debugging parts of things, then you're good to go. Because if not, you're going to have some issues. So let me go ahead and verify what this does.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand why it says custom switches. Like what?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let me show commit. Let's go ahead and I just created a Git repositories to keep track of the changes that I'm going to be doing on this file if I do. So I do see here that he's talking about switch type 1. So probably he's referring to this type of objects that are being created. That is a type of class that has been created here. So probably when he's referring to custom switches, he's talking about those. Now this file has all the GDI functions that he needs already here. So I do not need the GDI function library. Let's see what this does. Those are the switches. So this is what he's looking at right now, which is awesome. I like them. Now let's go ahead and verify what we're going to do. Oh. Okay, so each of these options here present a different sound. It looks like you guys cannot hear that. Let me go ahead and verify.
I heard it a little.
Let me share the sound here. So basically, that's one. So he's having a few options here. Now, let me see if I understand his question. I like those buttons, by the way. So my ask was about to animate the custom switches. In GDI, isn't enough. Why do you different? Where are you asking? Okay, so why did you use different ways to change the controls text in a same block? So here's the thing. It looks like he's referring to something that you guys were talking about last time.
Well, what you were talking earlier, the stuff you were working on, that's what I was confused.
Okay.
That when you were reviewing that first file, I think you were just showing these different approaches, right? Of like how you might have do something.
Okay, so well, let me just 1 second.
The one from Josh.
Yeah, so why did I use different ways to change the control text in the same block? Let me double check on something. So let's finish up with that example first before we go into the switches, because I had that already, in mind. So if you're there, if you're watching, just go ahead and let me know if you're referring to this here. Are you talking about this line here for clearing up the data. I think you're referring to this part here. So what happens is that this GUI control here, when you do not use the word text or you do not use anything else, what it does is that it removes the contents of an object. So if you have GUI edit, my test edit here, and let's go ahead and put some text. Let me show you what I have here. So we add, you see that. So let's make it 100. So now we have this control with text in it, right? So if you go ahead and use GUI control empty like that, and you just use the name of the control in here, what it does is that it clears it. Notice that I put text in it, right? But later on, I emptied it. If I remove line 5, it would just go ahead and keep the text that it has in it, right? So basically, using GUI control empty like that just clears the control, removes the text that it has. Now, if I select the option text, I can add different text. Notice that now, when I use text, I could put text in the control. So the difference between those two lines here is that on the ones here on top, I'm just clearing them, leaving them blank. But for the ones down here, I am adding specific text to them. And you can tell that when you start the GUI, he has some specific things in there. You see that? But these ones are empty. So when I go ahead and use the clear command, let's go ahead and remove that. When I use the clear command, what I do is that I make those empty, but those 3, I actually set text to them. You see that? So that's the reason why they're a little bit different. So you ask, so you can't clear like GUI control text, some control. Yeah, you can. So I could use text here. And if I make it blank, just like that, like if I don't put any text in it, if I don't put anything right there, it should clear the control as well. So they are basically the same. So having the word text
a bit further, if the GUI has a name, for instance, user, and you want to change the label, that static, not actually an edit, how do you change that particular section? For instance,
oh yeah, you can do that too. So for example, if you put the name of a variable that is actually a text label, like this one that says user,
yes,
you can, for example, if it had a variable, let's user text, right? So I just
you put a variable in there so you can refer to it later on.
Yeah, exactly. So if I have a variable on it, let's go ahead and show it here. So I just have this add text. We show return. So if I have it, notice that it says user, right? But if I add the GUI control text, and again, I just use the name of the variable for it, I could put whatever I want here. And it should change it to name now.
Perfect.
It started
That's one of the
user.
issues I'm having this morning. You've just saved me some.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you can do that. And if you just go ahead and take a look at the GUI control command in the help file, you should be able to see some examples. Now, I use the word text. If I don't put anything on the text, what it's going to do, it would clear it. That's what it's going to do. But what you have is this short way of doing it, that instead of having to put text in there, you just put GUI control, leave that blank, put the name of the variable, and that also clears it
But
up.
it's not intuitive to have a variable in a label. And that's why I was getting myself confused. You know,
It's not intuitive, but yeah.
For the edits, you have a variable that makes sense.
Right.
You
exactly.
want to put a value in there, but for
Right.
a label, why would you want to put a value in there? You know,
actually, what I would do, and this is something that I do myself just because, is that for every single control, I go ahead and create a handle.
Okay.
So I create a handle, user text, for example, for that one, a handle for this one institution. And the thing is, the handle itself, I can use it later on for many different purposes. If I need to hide that control or show it, if I need to change its text, if I need to move it, I already have a handle and I get used to it. So each and every single one of my controls usually have a handle associated to it, but you can do that with the variables as well. So the reason why I prefer a handle instead of a variable is because of what you just said. You just said, like, it is not intuitive. Why do I need a variable for a text control, right? Because you're not saving information from that text control. But if you have a handle, the handle is intuitive because the handle is just kind of like an ID.
Correct.
You have an ID for each and every single one of your controls.
How would you use the handle in your GUI control?
Yeah, you use the same.
Oh, instead of the variable name, you'd put the
no,
handle.
but you would have it. It differs a little bit because you would have to use the. Let me show you how you do it. So if you go to the help file, it would tell you that you see where it says control ID.
Yes.
You could use. Oh well, you can use the control ID. That's new, part of the new version after 1.104. You could actually use the handle of a control. So again, you just create, again, let's just use the same example here. Instead of a V, I would use a HWND. I usually name my handle variables with an H in front. So if I could just say GUI control empty, oh well, let's just add text to it, text. And I would put my handle in there and I would put new text. That should work the same. So now I'm referring to a handle that I was created here and it should just change the text of it. You can just refer to the handle using the percent signs. If you are referring to the variable name, you don't need that. So if it is user text, like this, you do not need the percent signs because you're referring to the variable ID. You see that? So you would need the percent signs for the handle itself because what you need is the number, not the variable name, but the number that is stored in that variable name. That's what.
Okay.
But in general, in general, what I do is that I usually use handles instead of variables for that reason, because it's as you just mentioned, it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. Right. But you know, if it's only one item on one form and once in a blue moon, you know, just use the variable and get it over and done with, you know. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So try to change or not deleting the label without putting text. It works just in certain situations, because what happens with GUI control is that it is kind of like, it has a little bit of situations that depends. So for example, if the first part is blank, it puts contents into the control. That's the reason why it works. Mm-hmm. But for example, if you use text, it changes the text and caption of the control. So if you have a control that has a caption and also certain values, you use text to specify what you want to change of that control. That's what is going on. So in any case, yes, if you do not have anything like this on the front without text, and you put a value onto it, you can do the same. That's the reason why, if you just put GUI control and the GUI ID like this, say like that, that's the reason why it clears the value. Because if you do not specify text and you do not specify the value, basically you are putting a value. The value is empty. Exactly. That's what you're doing. You're putting a value. If I put any value here, anything, it would set it to that what I just said. But if I don't specify anything, I am putting a value. The value is that is nothing. So that's what is going on in there.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now you just take a little time and try to understand how the GUI control command works, and you will be able to manipulate real time all the controls on your GUI or any other GUI. That's the funny thing about this, that if you have another GUI from another program that you happen to know the class NN, for example, of the control that you're trying to you can change the name, hide it, remove it. You can do a lot of stuff on that.
Awesome.
So for Lex, did we actually answer the question about the switches and something?
I think not, because he hasn't really finished the question. So what we did was actually that we switched back to the thing from Josh. But for his question here, and that's the reason why I haven't answered it, is that I'm not really understanding what he means. So
by animation, I'm thinking, does he want the switch to slide gently from left to right?
Like the animation, maybe that's what he means. So I'm sorry. So let me go ahead and verify this again. So Joe asked if it was answered. Okay, so the answer to that is no. Now you said yes. No, but the answer to that one is no. Now the yes part is what he just mentioned. So it seems to be that what you just said, like about the animation. So if you want to kind of like change the animation itself. Now for that, we would have to take a look at how the animation looks like. We have the state draw. So the draw on and draw off. So let me double check something. Because what happens is, and this is the cool thing about, how do I say, debugging, the debugging features on this thing. I'm going to make a break right at this point. So what happens is when you, let me go ahead and verify. When you go ahead and switch the state, you see this? I want to verify what happens when I switch the state. And when I actually go ahead and switch the state, I want to verify what happens when I say off or on. So I want to verify the code like on a very detailed level. So here I'd see that it is being drawn on. Yep, so that's what it's doing for each of them. Okay, we got it. Now, if I switch something, when I click on one of the buttons, it just goes to the switch state function. So if I want to animate the control, I would have to verify or modify this switch state. Now, what it does is that it checks what the state is right now, and it will switch it to the opposite of it. So right now the state is on. It will go ahead and change it to off. And depending on how it ends up, 1 or 0, it would either use draw on and draw off. So if I go ahead and step into those functions, I see that it goes to the off function because I'm turning it off. And I want to see what it means when he sets the image. So I go again, step into that function. I want to enter there. This is what he does. He actually sends a message to the control, to the bitmap control. And as soon as he sets the message, notice that it just changes the, it has an image and then it has a different image and it just switches between them. So you're talking about, let's go ahead and verify. You're talking about the bitmap on function. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Create on bitmap. No, that's not the one. Allow me just 1 minute. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let me verify that. Bitmap on, no. So that one is bitmap on bitmap is what you mean. Lex, can you tell me where that function is? Because the ones that I find are the ones that I just mentioned. Bitmap underscore on does not exist on this file. Maybe
wasn't it on underscore bitmap?
I think that's the one that he's referring to. Yeah. And that is just something that is created. So one time. So this is something that happens the first time. It just draws some things. There is no animation in there. Let me see what he sent right now. Right. So basically, that is an image. It is an image. It has nothing to do with animation. So let me go ahead and answer your question now. So I am really sure that it is not, and it is none of these two functions, because what they do is that they create an image. That's the only thing that they do. They have two images. One that is the image when it's on, one that is the image when it's off. When you click on the button, the only thing that the script is doing is that it changes one image to another. That's the only thing that it's doing. Yes, that's exactly the point that I was going to make. So what you can do, taking into consideration that that's what it's doing, you would go to this function here. So let's go ahead and here. So you see when it says switch state and it goes to the set image function, that's the one that you have to modify. The set image function just goes ahead and switches from one image to another. But what you can do is to have several images and do a for loop for, image. So for each image and you would have either an array of images, which is the whole animation.
Isaias, can I interrupt you just for a minute? Because I just know how Hellbent usually programs, right? What I would even say is, have the background as one image and the circle is a separate one. And the circle is the only thing that you're nudging over, right? You're drawing them.
Well, I would have thought about that, but remember, or just you should take a look at this. Let me just 1 second.
The background changes from pink to black.
Yeah, their background is different. So when you're doing the movement, I think you can just change the circle itself, but again, I do.
Would fading the first image out and fading the next image in, so you still have two images, but they're in different opacities, would that work?
Well, I don't know if that's the type of animation he means, but probably what he means is that he wants to see the movement from the left to the right side. But for that, you would need more images.
Yes.
If you don't have those images, you cannot really animate stuff. So you would need to have 2 or 3 more images in which the button is kind of like moving to the side. And as you have several images, what you would have to animate here is the draw on or the set image command to show each animation, like one image, the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. Usually I would do that in a loop. But basically that's the idea of behind animation, just showing many images one after the other. And where I would go ahead and modify the script is where it says set image. So that function is the one that actually goes ahead and let me go ahead and show you. So set image here. This is the function that is actually changing from one image to another. And what I would do is just switch it into a loop that shows many images. That's what I would do. what I see about this function is that it takes a handle and a bitmap. So I would leave this function as is, and I would go backwards here. You see where it says draw off? I would do here the loop, right? The loop that would set different images, and your parameter here, the off bitmap, is the one that is going to be changing. Say, for example, if you have 5 bitmaps, it would be bitmap 1, bitmap 2, bitmap 3. Well, that would be an A index there. And if you can do this, like loop 10, that would be 10 images. It would loop from each of them. It would set each image, but you would have to have a few images to work with. Now, you say, like, could you do 2 or 3 FPS slide animation, for example, or we would take some time? I would say it would take a little bit of time because I need the images first. So I would have to actually create images. Like I would have to go to Photoshop, create different animations to do this.
Yeah, but Hellbent also, has everything for drawing all this stuff as well. So
yeah,
in GDI, right? So my point is, you wouldn't actually have.
Oh, you wouldn't. I wouldn't need to create the image itself. Well, in that case, and let's go ahead and verify. Here are the creations. So you see that he's actually creating each of them, right? So you would have to check. You say, here's his on bitmap. That's how it looks like, right? But you would have to kind of like modify it slightly to have it so that it looks a little bit to the left. And that slight change, you have to save it somewhere. Now, after you save each of your animation images, then your set function should just, this one here, the draw off or draw on, should just loop through each of them. Now, again, this is something that I seriously cannot do that right now because I would have to see what changes I would be making to the rectangles here or the, the colors and so on. But
and here's the thing also I'd say is Hellbent has other examples where he's doing stuff closer to what you're looking for, right? It might be better to look for a different thing he's done than to doing
recreate or move this around. Yeah. But in general, so what I'm trying to give you, Lex, is basically the concept of what you're looking for. Because for me to change it right now is going to be a little bit more, it's going to take a little bit of time, and probably we don't have that time right now. But the concept is here where he's creating the bitmaps, you would have to create a bitmap for each state of the control that you need to automate. For each of the steps, like it moving to the left, you have to create a bitmap for each step. And then later on, when you try to show or modify the state of the button, which is here, the draw, or to switch the state, here, the set image, what you would have to do is just loop through each of those images that you created. That's the idea behind it. On my end, what I would do is just create a new function that says create animation on, for example. And this function, what it would do is that it would call off the create BIFMA repeatedly with different slight modifications to the parameters, for example, and the object itself would just modify those parameters slightly to the sideward. And for each of them, I would move it into an object like bitmap, a index here. Loop through that, loop 20. Kind of like this. And for each of these guys, it would be a index plus 10 or something like that. It would be, I'm just giving you pseudocode, right? So what this would do is that create animation on, it would create the bitmap for on, for example. Let's go ahead for on. It would create, each bitmap that it creates would be a little bit different than the previous one. And it would save it into a bitmap array, for example. And then later on, you just loop through that array to show it. But for that, I think it is better if you go ahead and take a look at already code that Hellbent already wrote for animation, by the way. It would make it a little bit easier for you. Let me see what you got here. You're sending.
And then we had a request also to do some stuff with OBS.
Change moving circle option. Now, let me go ahead and verify something because it might be, so that was line, so hold on.
He's saying his lines are,
That is interesting. I do not have that. Fill ellipse.
he said his lines are different.
Yep, it is totally different. Ellipse. So we got it here. So this is where he's doing the stuff. And this guy, what I wanted to do, yeah. So he is calling the GDI plus library directly. And here, again, instead of me trying to understand each and every single one of his functions, or how he's calling them, or if I have the option, it would be better if we take a look at something that he already did regarding animation. Now look at this. By looking at this function, I only see X, Y, width, and height. I do not see any additional options to animate, for example. So basically, I just can tell a specific position, a 1-point position, where it would fill the ellipse, right? So for that reason, I cannot use this function to animate anything. I can just tell it very specific locations. You see what I mean? So if you want to animate, you would have to do it yourself, is what I'm saying. You have to create a loop, a function that does a loop and creates the animation yourself. Because the functions themselves do not have options to animate. That's what I'm saying. So again, if you have a little bit of time, take a look at Hellbent's other work and verify if he has animations in GDI Plus to verify how he does it. And you just have to copy whatever he already did. Joe, you said that we had another request.
Well, there's two questions. One, I think this one's relatively simple with the OBS. So I think it was
OBS.
Two. Someone was asking about launching OBS minimized, and I said, my gut is that there's actually a command line parameter,
exception, right? A command line parameter.
Well, that's a simple route, right? I would think to launch it, minimized.
Or just see if there's an option for it, right? So if you go to the settings, maybe
hidden in there, yeah, sure.
I mean, the general, very likely it would have. No, hold on, cancel. If you go to the general, very likely, let me see, system tray, minimize, here it is. System tray, minimize to system tray when started.
Yeah, so is that,
so
wanting to
if you select that, if you say okay, and you close the program and reopen it, once you start it, you will not see any GUIs because it would be minimized directly into the tray. Maybe that's what he's looking for. If he's launching it through an AutoHotkey script, we would have to verify if you can pass parameters to it to go ahead and start minimized. So command line, maybe.
Yes, to start OBS minimized, okay.
Yeah, so that would be it. You just go ahead and go to the settings and select that option.
Isaias, hi everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Jean here. I'm not here for a long time. Sorry, I had a call with a client, so I'm just doing in and out. But if you use the run command to launch OBS, there's a parameter where you can say min in the option. So it should launch
there you
it
go.
min. So if it's not running, it's launched, but will stay minimized until you change it by your script or manually.
Right. So basically you could, for example, let me see some. You could change the the parameters here for the launching of it, probably like this is what you mean, like /min?
No, that's what I mean. I mean in the run command of AutoHotkey.
Oh, right. Yeah,
So
of course.
when you run, you put after that the path of the executable file, I think in the right order, then comma.
Right. So the
then,
run command.
then a second comma
command,
because,
yeah.
So,
So here it is, minimized.
min.
So in the options. So
you
that
could
would
also
be
say
the
in
target,
which
the
working directory.
Yeah, and then the
You
options. So
need the
basically,
working directory, by the
Right.
way. I know from my experience.
It's good to tell it. Yeah.
No, you have to have. At least I had
You
to
have
have.
to. Okay.
Yeah. It messed me up for a while. Of like,
Yeah, it will not find your files, your data
It'll
files.
be in the preferences of the shortcut. There we go.
right.
There's start in at the bottom. That's your working
Yeah,
directory.
so you would want to do this. So what I want to do is just run. Let's go ahead and grab the name of the script, the file that I want to run, which is this one here. And then the working directory would be this one.
Yeah.
Windows V, you had it already.
Yeah. And then you just go ahead and use the option min here, which would tell the run command to go ahead and open it minimized. But let me go ahead and verify something. Let's remove the option here, the setting that I just added to system tray.
Also
So that,
asking if it would hide it from the system tray, but no, well, that's a
I think there is an option. Yeah, so let's
that.
double check. So
There's also an old script in the forum where you can get you can tell it to hide system tray icons, which probably
Right.
still works in Windows 10. I know it worked in 8 and 7.
So right now, I'm just gonna run the file with the min option. Let me see if that works. So it looks like it didn't. So it opens it full. Let me double check something.
Sometimes programs do not listen to the run command correctly.
Command, right.
Same thing if you try to move the window, sometimes the program just do not comply to your command.
Right. So in this case, it is happening that it is not actually
Yeah,
obeying
it
that
says
request.
the same thing for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, even though we could have tried, but
Because the syntax,
instance,
the syntax is good.
take it.
So yeah.
Yeah. But again, you can go to its settings and let me double check if it gives.
But then
you the
it
option.
will always open minimize. It will not
Right,
be
it
only
will-
for this script or this hotkey.
Yeah, using hotkey to fire up the minimize in the command line. Can you pass the command line to OBS to start minimize as opposed to using?
That's what that was
Yeah.
one of the things that I wanted to kind of like check, but I would have to go to the internet and verify if
Yeah.
there are command
Yeah.
line parameters and see what they are.
Yeah.
But in general, the main idea is that, yeah, you could do that. You can remove the option of system tray altogether.
Yes.
And now what that means is that now you have the tray here only. Sorry, the taskbar option. But I'm not really sure if you can remove the tray and the taskbar, because then how would you call it?
Alt tab.
Yeah, no, because it would not have a taskbar item. You cannot alt tab. So you cannot alt tab to something that does not have a taskbar item, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So for example, if you have a program that only has a tray icon, you will not see it here unless the window is open, right?
Okay.
So if you have something that is minimized, but it doesn't have a taskbar icon, then there is no way for you to kind of like see it there. Like, for example, this one here, my toolkit, if I hide it right now, it only has the taskbar icon here. Now, if you alt tab, you're not going to find it on the, because it doesn't have a taskbar window open, right? So in any case, I think you can remove the taskbar, but then you would, the system tray icon, but then you would be left only with the taskbar. Or you can enable that and always minimize there, but you will not have the taskbar icon. But then you will have a system tray icon here. So it is kind of like either or. You cannot have both removed, at least with the options here. I don't see that here.
Gene, before you disappear,
Yeah.
can I fire a question off at you? Is that okay, Joe?
Yeah.
I've started using your quick access pop-up, and I love the graphics. I have a question. I have a requirement. Again, it's what I don't know. That's important. I have the same set of folders that I use regularly over different programs. So, for instance, Adobe Bridge, Windows Explorer, another graphics application. When I use the pop-up, if I'm actually in Adobe Bridge, I want to be able to open up a file in Adobe Bridge. If I'm in Windows Explorer, I want it to open there. So it depends on which. When I'm looking at the folders, I want it to open the folder I found in the current application I'm at. That way, it gives me a unified display because the quick access, the favorites are different in each program. They're in different places. They're different colors, they're different shapes. At least this way, I have a unified favorites folders for all my applications. Is there a way of achieving that at the moment?
No, it's in the request. It's in the wish list, actually.
Okay.
But it's not possible. You have the same menu regardless of the application, the active window. But it's something
No, the menu's good. I'm happy with the menu. The menu's not the option. The menu's good. I want to be able to, when I select a file, for it to open up that file in the current application, not in the standard application.
Okay, so by default, the file is open with the associated application. So
correct,
and being always the same. So you want, when you select a document favorite,
yes,
to open in different application depending on what is the active window.
Correct.
Okay.
Because which means whether I'm in Word or whether I'm in Photoshop, they can both open a particular file. Therefore, I don't have to go and open with or click and drag it.
Yeah.
It's just less clicking and it's quicker.
Yeah. I'm not sure it is technically feasible because what Quick Access Pop-up is doing, it's using the run command, the same run command we've seen a few minutes about OBS. And this run command, if you enter the path of a document, it will find the associated application and launch it with it. So we would have
specified the application. So if you
there may be a way. Yeah. Okay. In Quick Access Pop-up, there's an option launch with. If maybe I'll share my screen.
Yep.
Just a minute.
Yep. Because
it's not possible now, but it would be something that could be similar to.
It's possible for a hotkey to figure out which application is currently running.
Yeah.
And then run the run command associated with it.
Actually, if you create a document favorite in the advanced setting, you have this option launch with this application.
Correct.
What we could imagine is that we would have a kind of a placeholder here or something like placeholders in Quick Access Pop-up are with an active window.
Yes, correct.
If you do that, then when Quick Access Pop-up launch the document, it would look if there's a path here. Normally here it would be a path. It would be a real file, a real executable file. But instead, if it is this, it would look at what is the active application. Tell me, Isaias or Joe, I can get the path of the active window so if you have Word running, you can find what is the path of this, but it would launch a new instance of Word. It would not necessarily open in the current instance of Word. It would detect that it is Word. Then it would replace this with C/program files /office /Word. And then comma or with a parameter that would be the document path. In fact, this would be inserted before the path of the document that you would have here.
Yes.
But unless there is a switch, and it would have to be different for each application, that would say open. If you relaunch Word, maybe it will launch a second window of Word. But yeah, it could work.
I mean, relaunching a second.
It depends on the application.
Yeah, Photoshop, for instance, will open up a new document.
Yeah.
while Word will open up a new instance of Word.
Yeah, it would have to be tested.
Yeah,
I'm
it'll have to be
using, for
tested.
example, PaintShop Pro, a small graphic editor. If you launch it, you may have 5 images in your application. If you launch it with the run command, you will have a second application with a second set of documents or images being opened. But yes, it's a new idea that I will add to the wish list, and something that will require some investigation, but it's interesting option.
As a user, it's an idea that will save me a lot of clicking about, which means I have one favorite folder that will run with all my applications. I don't have different favorite folders. The other question is, when I run the pop-up, I've got to suspend the hotkeys because some of them interfere with my programs. Is there any way that I can switch off specific keys so they don't interfere with my programs?
Yeah, let me just take a note about the first ID before I forget it.
Okay.
In LaunchWith. I was doing it for the last hour. I was with a client just taking notes of things he wants. So today I'm collecting IDs. I need some time.
You're on a roll.
I need some time to do it at the moment. But yes, what's your second question, Guy?
The second question is, I have to suspend the hotkeys because they interfere with the remap hotkeys already used.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere where I can switch individual hotkeys around in the pop-up, in the settings, to switch off, for instance, Control-Shift-F?
Yeah, you can remove the hotkey in Quick Access pop-up if it's not one that you are using, or you can change it to something else. You could share your screen if you wish, and we could take a look at that.
My screen has just got, if you share yours, just show me on the pop-up.
Okay.
It's easier because I've got some confidential stuff on the screen at the moment.
So if you go, for example, in Tools, Manage Hotkeys.
Yes.
If you are here, you have all the shortcut, the hotkeys that are currently programmed in your pop-up menu. You can sort them.
Okay.
And Shift Control F by default, when you create it, it's assigned to, I don't remember what, but I changed it to have it to launch Audacity with a given parameter, for example.
But so I can remove it.
If you, so for example, if I want to remove it, I will double click here and select none. So
perfect.
So
and that won't interfere, then it'll be lovely because it won't interfere with my.
Yeah. So what you could also do is and I'm doing it from the hotkeys here, the Manage Hotkeys window, because you see all your hotkeys at once, but you could do it also, for example, here, it's a folder favorite. You could assign this, it's assigned to Shift Control Z. You could change it here. But if you don't know what is using a given hotkey, it's easier to find them when you go to Manage Hotkeys and sort them. So here you'll find it.
John, I don't recall. Can you make them context sensitive?
Could you repeat, please?
Can you make your hotkeys context sensitive to only work in certain windows?
No, that's that's one of the requests already in the wish list.
Because I find myself bouncing between 4 or 5 applications. And I'm manipulating images and I'm dragging and dropping them from X to Y. I'm just repeating this over and over and over again. And each one's got a different, for instance, favorites setup. So
the only thing you can do is about the main trigger for the quick access pop-up menu, which is by default the middle mouse button that will open your menu. You could exclude some application here for example, inside the AutoHotkey, the editor I'm using for AutoHotkey. The middle mouse menu button is used for something that I'm currently often use inside, so I exclude it. So you could exclude some, but it is only for the main triggers, which are middle mouse button by default. And that's.
I have a side key on my mouse. Is it possible to assign that to trigger quick access pop-up rather than middle button?
When you create a hotkey, let's just do it here. If I change the hotkey, you can assign a hotkey to a keyboard mouse, but instead you could select one of your mouse buttons.
Okay.
So there's the left, the
Special
middle mouse.
buttons.
Yeah, you have two special buttons.
Hmm.
And what is also interesting, depending on your mouse, if you push your wheel button, it is called the middle mouse button. But if you move it left or right here, it can also trigger something different.
Perfect.
So and wheel up, wheel down also could be used, but it's often something that you will use in any program to scroll, so that you won't if you. But left and right it's fun to have these two options also. So you have, in fact, these two special and these two ones.
For me, the special on the left will be really useful. I think they call it the back button. I've got it. So,
and you have to figure out which one is one and which one is two. Okay. It can be different on any window.
Awesome. And that's for the main. That's for the
for
control.
For any hotkey. For any.
The one that launches Quick Hackers pop-up.
Oh.
It's for the one I was showing you was for a folder favorite, but any favorite can have these various type of hotkeys.
Perfect. Okay.
The only thing that is specific to the main menu is the exclusion list that we've seen. That is only for the main menu.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hey, Zayas. In the YouTube chat.
Yeah, I'll just say you bye-bye. See you next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
They were talking about V2 and, should we use it? And one of the guys, the UTR, he said he's a program. I mean, it sounds like he's a programmer. He's programming the languages. And that's where I said, hey, maybe V2 is really, where you want to start if you're just starting on a hotkey. And then someone was mentioning also that, like, hey, there's not a ton of libraries out there yet for it, which is 100% true, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that was what I was curious if you have any input on is that Lexicos hasn't basically been doing anything to it, and that he's the quote unquote only developer. And that's when I'm like, I know Geeswig, I was chatting with him last week and he pushed some updates there.
Yeah, he has been pushing updates to the version 2 and so on. The only thing is that there's a few details regarding the direction in which they want to go, in which that's what makes it a little bit hard to see the changes very quickly. But in general, I do, if you already have programming background in other languages, like for example, JavaScript or any language that is kind of like mainstream language, I would say version 2 of AutoHotkey is going to feel a little bit more, a little bit easier for you to kind of like grasp, because version 1 has a lot of quirks and a lot of details that makes it work very differently than other languages. And that's the reason why version 2 is out there, because they're making it so that many things feel a little bit more like the mainstream coding. The reason why mainstream is because it works, so it is the most common thing because it works. And even though some people do not like it, but it is actually, it works okay. Now, it is true there are no many libraries on it, but you might not need it, because in version 2, there's a little bit better integration with COM objects. So you do not need libraries. You just connect to a COM object that does what you're looking for. And there are so many COM objects out there that it is very likely that whatever you're trying to do, you can do it with a COM object. And in version 2 is a little bit easier than in version 1 with that.
The other thing I was going to say is just, and at some point, and it's still, it may be 2 years out, right? But it's going to be the default version of AutoHotkey at some point. And that's just why I'm like, if you're just starting out, it might be the right approach for you.
Yeah, and regarding the timing, like in 2 years or so on, well, I'm using it right now. It works fine. The type of bugs that you might find is if you are doing very complex programming, like, if you're creating very big programs that push the limits of what a scripting language might do. If you're just doing it for yourself, small programs, or, things for client that are just quick programs, I really suggest you going with version 2. I think that's the best approach.
Yeah, and he's saying he won't be able to use the ocean of V1 scripts out there. I mean, there's a converter, right, that'll adapt, especially if it's not a GUI. It'll probably do a pretty good job adapting.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to push you on it, right? Because I'm not switching, right? At least not.
he doesn't use version 2, right?
But I just know from talking to programmers that
yeah.
they love V2 over V1, right?
Yeah. Regarding being able to use the other scripts, why not? Like,
Well,
why
here's the other
not?
thing.
Basically, yeah, because you can have
Yeah,
both
You
installed
can have
at
both,
the same time.
right?
Right now, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I have. I have them both.
Right.
And so if you are scared that you can't, and actually notice that, for example, right now, here at the bottom, it says AutoHotkey, but I could switch it to AutoHotkey version 2. And it would tell me like this script is not going to run, you know, like I know that it's not going to run in version 2, but I can have both of them. And if I go to my AutoHotkey folder, you will see that I have these two here are version 2. If you notice at the pop-up that shows up, you see the version, it says file version 2.0. So those two are AutoHotkey version 2. And these three down here are version 1. And I just point at, I tell the script that if the file ends in .ahk, it runs with version 1. And if the file ends in AH2, like this, then it just runs with AutoHotkey version 2. You can do that. That's not a problem. And that's how I have it in my computer. It doesn't matter. You can just set it up that way. So, you know.
Yeah, I think he just said he heard that V1 scripts will not run V2. And it depends on the script, right? A lot of the stuff won't work. However, as what he's saying now is you can have both installed and switch between them. It's not I have to choose one. It's which one is going to be the main one that you study and learn and develop new stuff in, right?
Yep, that's right.
So anyway, that was a really great session. Thanks everyone for joining us, and let us know if you have any questions. And come back next Friday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talk to you.
Everyone, have a good day.